This is the story of something that happened in the time of Xerxes. The Xerxes who ruled from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all. King Xerxes ruled from his royal throne in the palace complex of Susa. Now there was one Jew who lived in the palace complex of Susa. His name was Mordecai. His ancestors have been taken from Jerusalem with the exiles and carried off with the king of Judah by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Mordecai has raised his cousin Esther since she had no mother or father. Their girl was very beautiful. After her parents died, Mordecai had adopted her. Now King Xerxes was looking for a new wife. Many young girls were brought to the palace complex of Susa to hopefully be chosen as the new queen. Esther was among them.
Haggai, who was in charge of all the girls who came, liked Esther and took a special interest in her. Right off, he started her beauty treatments, ordered special food, assigned her 7 personal maids from the palace, and put her and her maids in the best rooms. Esther didn't say anything about her family and racial background because Mordecai had told her not to. Each girl's turn came to go into King Xerxes after she had completed the 12 months of prescribed beauty treatments. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, he fell in love with her. He placed a royal crown on her head and made her queen. He proclaimed a holiday for all the provinces and handed out gifts with royal generosity.
One day, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. 2 of King Xerxes' servants who guarded the entrance had it in for the king and were making plans to kill him. But Mordecai learned of the plot and told Queen Esther, who then told King Xerxes, giving credit to Mordecai. When the thing was investigated and confirmed as true, the 2 men were hanged on gallows. This was all written down in a logbook kept for the king's use. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted a man named Haman, making him the highest-ranking official in the government. All the king's servants would honor him by bowing down and kneeling before Haman. That's what the king had commanded.
Everyone except Mordecai. He wouldn't do it, wouldn't bow down and kneel because he was a Jew. When Haman saw for himself that Mordecai didn't bow down and kneel before him, he was outraged. Having learned that Mordecai was a Jew, Haman hated to waste his fury on just one Jew. He looked for a way to eliminate not just Mordecai, but all Jews throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. Haman then spoke with King Xerxes. There is an odd set of people scattered through the provinces of your kingdom who don't fit in. Their customs and ways are different from those of everybody else. Worse, they disregard the king's laws. They're an affront. The king shouldn't put up with them. If it please the king, let orders be given that they be destroyed. I'll pay for it myself. I'll deposit 375 tons of silver in the royal bank to finance the operation.
Go ahead, the king said to Haman. It's your money. Do whatever you want with those people. Bulletins were sent out by couriers to all the king's provinces with orders to massacre, kill, and eliminate all the Jews, youngsters and old men, women and babies. On a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month Adar, and to plunder their goods. At the king's command, the couriers took off. The order was also posted in the palace complex of Susa. The king and Haman sat back and had a drink while the city of Susa reeled from the news.
When Mordecai learned what had been done, he ripped his clothes to shreds and put on a sackcloth and ashes. Then he went out into the streets of the city, crying out in loud and bitter cries. Esther's maids came and told her. The queen was stunned. Esther sent one of her servants to go to Mordecai and get the full story of what was happening. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him. He also told him the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to deposit in the royal bank to finance the massacre of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the bulletin that had been posted in Susa, ordering the massacre so he could show it to Esther. Mordecai asked Esther to go to the king and intercede and plead with him for her people.
When Esther heard Mordecai's request, she told him, "Everyone who works for the king here, and even the people out in the provinces, knows that there is a single fate for every man or woman who approaches the king without being invited: death. The one exception is if the king extends his gold scepter, then he or she may live. It's been 30 days now since I've been invited to come to the king." Mordecai told Queen Esther, "Do you think that just because you live in the king's house, you're the one Jew who will get out of this alive? If you persist in staying silent at a time like this, help and deliverance will arrive for the Jews from someplace else, but you and your family will be wiped out. Could it be that you were made queen for just a time as this?"
3 days later, Esther dressed in her royal robes and took up a position in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's throne room. The king was on his throne facing the entrance. When he noticed Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased to see her. The king extended the gold scepter in his hand. Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. The king asked, "And what's your desire, Queen Esther? What do you want? Ask and it's yours, even if it's half of my kingdom." "If it pleases the king," said Esther, "let the king come with Haman to a dinner I prepared for him."
So the king and Haman went to dinner with Queen Esther 2 times. At the second dinner, while they were drinking wine, the king asked again, "Queen Esther, what would you like? Half of my kingdom? Just ask and it's yours." Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it please the king, give me my life and give my people their lives. We have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, sold to be massacred, eliminated. If we had just been sold off into slavery, I wouldn't even have brought it up. Our troubles wouldn't have been worth bothering the king over." King Xerxes exploded. "Who? Where is he? Who is this monster? An enemy? An adversary?" "This evil Haman," said Esther. Haman was terror-stricken before the king and queen. The king, raging, left his wine and stalked out into the palace garden. Haman stood there pleading with Queen Esther for his life. He could see that the king was finished with him and that he was doomed. As the king came back from the palace garden into the banquet hall, Haman was groveling at the couch on which Esther reclined. The king roared out, "Will he even bless the queen while I'm just around the corner?" When that word left the king's mouth, all the blood drained from Haman's face. Then one of the servants attending the king spoke up. "Look over there. There's the gallows that Haman had built to execute Mordecai, who saved the king's life. It's right next to Haman's house." The king said, "Hang him on it." And this is how Esther saved the Jewish race from extinction.